Thank you so much, Beatrice. I really appreciate your introduction. I actually heard the words of Professor Feinberg, and he claims that liberal democracy is still alive and kicking in the continent. The states are stronger than before, and the markets are also stronger than before. I have to disagree, with all due respect, with Professor Feinberg. But this is why I see at this point. The Biden administration's foreign policy is currently focused on two main issues. First is the crisis on the southern border, and the second is the increasing influence of China in the region. And of course, this is, I understand the policies that the United States is carrying out, like improving the economic and social conditions of these countries, the encouragement of private sectors, American corporate investments, training of locals to prevent child labor, vaccines for COVID-19, food programs. All this, I think, is very good. In terms of trying to counteract or counterbalance the so-called Belt and Road Initiative, the Biden administration initiated, and Dr. Feinberg mentioned it, the America's Partnership for Economic Prosperity, which is a US-led forum to bolster regional investment. I doubt that the United States at this point is capable of competing with the Belt and Road Initiative in the region. I think the Chinese are well established and well rooted in the region, but I think that the effort by President Biden is worth the while. Now, with regard to the issue of democracy, okay, the U.S. has had a policy of democracy promotion for decades, and I think Dr. Feinberg actually has been one of the key witnesses of those policies since the era of Bush the First through Bill Clinton and others. Now, but I think that this policy requires reevaluation. As an example, in countries where democracy formally exists, it should continue to support the consolidation of democracy and public accountability. The US should make sure that leaders such as Javier Milei, who intends to fight corruption and reconstruct the Argentinian state, consolidates a democracy with proper division of powers, independence of judges, and transparency. The United States can definitely advise on this, has a lot to offer. In countries where democracy does not exist, the US should continue to support transitions as much as it can, although I frankly do not expect Maduro to give up his rule over Venezuela. The administration has imposed new sanctions on Cuba and Nicaragua. Frankly, I don't know how much these sanctions are going to work. In this sense, I agree with Dr. Feinberg.
Luis, te queda un minuto.
Venezuela to pressure the Maduro government to negotiate a transition. And now it has resumed them after Maduro disqualified Maria Corina Machado. That is good. But here is another problem that Dr. Feinberg mentioned. He claims that Latin America has stronger states. And this is probably one of my biggest points of contention. Precisely, one of the biggest problems the region faces is the problem of multiple sovereignty. Governments do not have a monopoly over the means of violence because transnational crime and their accomplices have accumulated more power than the government. There is an anarchical situation that might well convert the region into another Afghanistan, a region dominated by warlords and infiltrated by terrorist groups. The FARC dissidents, the ELN and Hezbollah already have a strong presence in the region, and their presence is likely to increase. Not to speak about the influx of
Luis, Luis, ¿no te quedas?
And their support for authoritarian regimes. Yes, Beatriz, I'm sorry?
30 segundos.
Okay, I'm going to finish in a moment. So I believe, and this is probably one of my most important points, at this point we have a president in El Salvador that is cracking down on transnational crime. I think it's extremely important to crack down on transnational crime. I am aware that Bukele actually crossed the lines by detaining people that shouldn't have been detained, by having long administrative detentions. But on the other hand, is providing an important service to the people that elected him. And now he was elected with 85% of the population. Ecuador is facing the same problem, and more countries are going to face the same problem. So, and this is my light point. Transnational crime is not an opposition party. It is a subversive group that eats the state like cancer. Fighting gangs is a war. It is like fighting terrorism. And fighting terrorism allows for administrative detention. Even democratic countries use these measures when they face terrorism. And this is where I think the United States can contribute. I think it should support the efforts to fight and defeat transnational crime, but at the same time, the United States has the capability to advise this country how to do it within the framework of the law. That means everything should be legal. Administrative detentions should not be indefinite. House arrest, no military trials, right? With convictions based on secretive evidence. Nothing like that. That means the United States can provide advice on how to fight transnational crime while maintaining the law. And I think Colombia, a plan that Dr. Feinberg is very familiar with, actually has succeeded in that.
Luis, estás requete pasado.